Ferrari is in an experimental phase. Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc have given their all to test the latest creation from the engineers in Maranello. But what are the results? That is a good question. Even they do not know for sure at this moment, despite the fact that the Monegasque driver's expressions, well known for his inability to hide his emotions, do not convey much optimism. It is a different story for the British driver, who has just arrived and is highly motivated in his new adventure. Any judgment is therefore postponed to the first round of the 2025 Formula One Championship, the Australian Grand Prix, which is scheduled to take place at the 5.278-kilometre Albert Park Grand Prix circuit in Melbourne on Sunday, March 16th, where the Maranello team promises to be ready. Let's hope so, but what is clear is that there is room for improvement. Many have already chosen to use the now well-known cliché to describe the competitive context in which the prancing horse has found itself over the last 16 racing seasons. This year, too, we will win next year. Being realistic is very important in the paddock, where even the smallest detail shifts the balance. Nevertheless, excessive negativity brings nothing good. On the contrary, it poisons the team's environment and, in general, plants the seed of anxiety in the minds of the key players. Ferrari has everything it needs to prove it can win. However, it is time to put it into practice. In today's second video, beyond the introduction, there are a couple of interesting topics to discuss. The first concerns the front end of the SF-25 car, which we talked about extensively during the 3 days of pre-season testing in Bahrain. Various adjustments were made, with an interesting intervention, especially in Charles Leclerc's case, where the mechanics worked on changing the brake system setup to fix the issues. The pull rod suspension system introduced by the Ferrari technicians and engineers provides undoubtedly different sensations at the wheel. The Monegasque himself has spoken about it, and in fact, we mentioned it live at around 9 in the morning on February 28, the last day of pre-season testing in Bahrain. We are talking about a crucial aspect related to Charles Leclerc's driving style. Through the countless onboard videos observed in recent seasons, we now know by heart the distinctive traits of the former Alfa Romeo driver. That is why Charles Leclerc's lack of confidence under braking was concerning. Being unable to fully exploit one of his key strengths takes away competitiveness, something the Ferrari driver absolutely cannot afford to suffer. This issue is rooted in the problems experienced by the Maranello team, even with Lewis Hamilton. Yes, because when all is said and done, even the 7-time Formula One world champion has not been immune to this headache. Ferrari has tried to fix the problem and, although it has partly succeeded, this operation has revealed a side effect. We refer to the rear end of the Ferrari SF-25 single-seater, which has consequently become even more difficult to manage, both in low-fuel qualifying simulations and in high-fuel race runs with a heavy fuel load, an unexpected competitive scenario. The difficulties in refining the front end led to a drop in performance in the more technical sections of the track. The asynchrony between the two axles is a hot topic in Formula One, and, in Ferrari's case, is largely caused by the new pull rod suspension. Switching to this layout was risky, especially in the final year of regulatory continuity. However, the Maranello-based team was not wrong in its aggressive approach. It was the right path to open a new development cycle that could offer aerodynamic advantages, otherwise unattainable with the pushrod setup. It must be said that the Italian side attempted to slightly adjust the rear wing angle to counter this issue with greater downforce. The increased load made the situation less critical, though it did not completely eliminate the described phenomenon. Charles Leclerc has always been able to manage vertical load below the optimal value thanks to his driving skills. However, when the balance is too far off, even his abilities cannot make the difference. In conclusion, the team has gathered a wealth of data that is now under analysis. This work-in-progress data has been used to update the simulator, known as the Giant Black Spider, with real track feedback. This is a crucial factor, as it will allow the Maranello team to work with knowledge gained directly on the track, reducing the margin of error in hypothetical scenarios. We know that the driver-in-the-loop software, which aims to replicate reality, remained active late into the night yesterday to speed up this process. One last piece of information. Ferrari has also tested the setup planned for the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne, where the SF-25 single-seater is expected to perform better. Charles Leclerc added that during testing, the focus is primarily on oneself, but it is natural to also observe what others are doing, even though it's hard to know exactly how they are performing. He mentioned that there are still many unknowns, so they need to take the times with a pinch of salt. The Monegasque driver explained that it was very important for them to understand what they were lacking compared to others and in relation to his own feelings. He emphasized that there was still a lot of work to do to be ready for Melbourne, and that was their main focus. Regarding McLaren, he noted that they seemed strong, but it was too early to make any conclusions. He stressed the importance of focusing on their own progress and not being swayed by first impressions, as they still did not know much. He concluded by saying there were still many question marks, but they had learned a lot from the first tests, which would certainly help them find the right setup moving forward. Predominantly, the off-season talk surrounding Ferrari has been the starry arrival of Lewis Hamilton, with fans and media alike keen to see how the seven-time champion fares in his new surroundings. However, from a technical aspect, Ferrari has produced a unique proposition with its SF-25, which features several changes compared to its predecessor. This includes the attention-grabbing switch from pushrod to pull-rod front suspension for the first time in 10 years. On the second day of Formula One's three-day test at the Bahrain International Circuit, it appeared that all things new were gelling well at Ferrari. The British driver was fastest in the morning session and held on to second spot through to the end of the day, as Charles Leclerc's best effort propped up from third. On the third and final day, however, the wheels came partially off for the Maranello team as rising temperatures, as opposed to uncharacteristically cold days prior, exposed some of the SF-25's weaknesses. The assessment is that Ferrari's 2025 Formula One car is a prancing horse that needs breaking in and taming. The Monegasque driver told Sky Italia that they were seeing the numbers they had expected, although they had encountered some difficulties in managing the balance the previous afternoon and that day, indicating there was still work to be done. He acknowledged that the weather had played a significant role over the past days, not only in terms of temperature, but also due to the wind. The Ferrari driver preferred to wait a little longer before making any predictions and explained that the team was working hard to improve the balance as they had struggled somewhat in the last 2 days. He added that they would see how things unfolded in Melbourne, but reiterated that their main focus was on addressing the balance issues experienced in the recent sessions. Even if temperatures ramped up ever so slightly on the final day of testing, Bahrain was still far cooler than anyone would have anticipated. For that reason, Charles Leclerc is cautious of drawing any permanent conclusions. Charles Leclerc mentioned that it was a bit difficult to confirm his feelings because he did not think he had ever experienced Bahrain like this before. The Monegasque driver noted that it was cold and rainy, conditions they were not accustomed to. He added that it was hard to make a comparison with previous years, where the temperatures had been warmer. Ferrari knows it can't get distracted by the impressive pace of McLaren. One thing that can be gleaned from testing is that McLaren is looking mightily impressive, and its race simulations suggest Team Papaya is the one to beat. Charles Leclerc was outshone by Lando Norris during parallel race simulations on Thursday, but without having all the information of what his rivals are up to, the Monegasque driver believes the pecking order represents something of an unknown.